Hello my beautiful friends, welcome back to my channel. It is so good to have you back here again for a new episode. And if you are new here, hello and welcome. Why don't you stick around to see what kind of shocking but also very interesting true crime story I have for you today. And of course, please do subscribe to the channel. Now, before I get into the story, I have to give out a channel disclaimer, and that is my channel is not meant to show any disrespect towards the victims or the families of the victims that I talk about in these videos. The information that I share with my audience is simply just research taken from different sources of the internet and then compiled into a single YouTube video. And the main purpose of my channel is for educational and also awareness purposes of the different types of crimes we face on a daily basis. And the content warning is that in this case, I will be talking about murder and sexual assault. So if you are sensitive to that type of content, then viewer discretion is very much advised. Okay guys, I know I've already uploaded an episode for this week, and I don't normally upload more than once a week. And the reason for that is doing this kind of work is very exhausting and takes a lot of time. So if you're working by yourself, it can be very difficult to upload 2 or 3 times a week. However, recently I have made a new friend, a lovely lady that I met in a Facebook true crime group who approached me about the idea of working together. And her name is Lanice McCarthy, as you have seen her name on the screen. And she's going to be helping me research these cases in future, which means I might actually have the time to upload about 2 or 3 times a week, because now I'm not working alone anymore. So which means more content for you guys. So I'm definitely excited about this. But now let's get into the story that I have for you today. And as you may have seen by the title of the video, it is another family murder case. And this one was also heavily covered in the media. Just like the Van Breda family murders, the Lauder family murders, and also the Adlinton family murders. And trust me, it is just as tragic as those ones that I've covered in the past. So sit back, relax, and let me tell you all about the Griekwastad family murders, also known as the Steenkamp family murders. 44-year-old Deon Steenkamp was the father and husband of a family of 4. He was married to 43-year-old Christel Steenkamp. And like I said, they were a tight-knit family of 4, so together they had 2 kids. Their firstborn child being Deon Steenkamp, who was 16 at the time of this case, and their secondborn was their daughter Marthella Steenkamp, who was 14 at the time of this case. Now, before I go any further, in South Africa in 2013, we had another Steenkamp case, and it was the Riva Steenkamp case, who was murdered by her boyfriend Oscar Pistorius. I think it's important for me to mention that the Steenkamp family that we're going to talk about today and Riva Steenkamp's family are not related. They're 2 separate families. They just share the same surname. Alright, now back to the story. The Steenkamp family lived in Griekwastad, a town where everyone knew each other and where anything like what I'm about to tell you never takes place. So that is why this case took everyone by surprise. And they lived on a farm called the Nauwhoek farm, which is about 7 to 8 kilometers away from the town of Griekwastad. The family farm was owned by Deon Steenkamp, and as a matter of fact, he also owned 4 other farms. At the top of the farm was the main house that the family lived in, and then just a few meters away, they also had a house for their farm workers, and they also had a barn on the farm. Now, as you may have guessed on the count of all these farms, the Steenkamp family was a wealthy family, and Deon worked on his farms for most of his life. Deon, in terms of appearance, was a largely built man. He was taller and bigger than your average kind of man in his 40s. And as much as he loved his wife and his children, he also loved tending to the animals that he had on the farm. And he was also very involved in his community. He was a deacon at his church, and he was also part of the farmers union. So he was quite a hands-on kind of guy. His wife, Christel, was described as a hard-working person. She owned a business and always wanted to have her hands full. And one more thing about her is that she was just a loving mother to her kids and also a loving wife to her husband, Deon. When it comes to their kids, Deon and Marthella, both kids went to boarding school, and Deon attended Grey College. And since the boarding school was about 400 kilometers away from their house, This meant that their family only got to see them on weekends, so they would spend some time together. Dawn's little sister Marthella was described as a very sweet but also shy child. But even though she had this side of hers that was shy, she was also outgoing and had a lot of friends. Dawn was more of a quiet but also very serious child. But overall, the Steenkamp family was well loved in the community, and that tells you a lot about the kind of people they must have been. But then this wonderful family, along with the community, had no idea how things were about to become very terrible for the family on April 6th in 2012. On the 6th of April in 2012, a white Isuzu buggy came storming in and quickly came to a stop in a police parking lot. And inside of it was 16-year-old Deon Steenkamp covered in blood. He came out of the buggy to report an incident that had happened at his family home. As he stumbled out of the car, he fell down and then he said to the police, "You have to come quick. Everyone is dead." Everything was covered in blood, except for Deon's t-shirt. Strangely, it was as clean as if it was still new. And then once the police heard what he said, that everyone is dead, they decided to sit him down so he can tell them exactly what happened. Deon told them that he was in the barn fixing a light when he heard gunshots coming from the house. And as soon as he heard the commotion, he got scared and decided to hide himself behind a work desk. And then when things got quiet, that's when he decided to get out and go into the house to see what happened. And that's when he came across a bloody scene of his entire family dead. The two warrant officers then decided to rush over to the house to see what really happened and confirm if anything he said was actually what happened at that house. They left Deon at the police station as he waited for his extended family to come after they heard the terrible news. And then once they arrived, a detective also arrived with them who wasn't at the station when Deon got there. The detective was briefed in by the officers who were talking to Deon before he arrived, and after that he decided to go talk to Deon himself so he can try to get more information out of him. But as he was trying to do this, Deon's extended family then came in and said maybe he could do this another time because clearly the boy was still in shock. But then the detective went on to say that he had to do it. He had to get more information out of him as quickly as he possibly could, so unfortunately this couldn't wait. The detective noticed some scratch marks on Deon's neck, and then he decided to take photographs of these scratch marks. And then Deon's clothes were also taken in for DNA testing, but when it came time to take photograph of Deon's body and the blood that was on him, it was already washed off. The detective started asking Deon about why he washed off the blood, and he told him that Marthella died in his arms because when he saw her on the floor, he went for her and then he held her in his arms, and that's when her blood got on him, and then he decided to wash it off. There was a farmer who lived not too far from the Steenkamp family, and so the police went over to that farmer so he could take him into the house because he knew the layout of the property. The officers, once they got into the house, they came across the body of Deon Steenkamp, who was shot once in the shoulder, once behind the ear, and then also once at the back of his head. Another thing the officers noticed was that Deon Steenkamp was badly beaten all over his face, and he was also beaten on the top torso of his body. That as they looked around some more, they came across the body of Deon's mother, Christel, who appeared to have been working when she was shot. She had been shot once in the back and then once at the back of her head. And then they also came across the body of 14-year-old Marthella, who was shot over 4 times, twice in the chest and then twice in her face. When the bodies were taken for an autopsy, it was said that Christel suffered the least of all 3. However, Marthella is the one who felt the full wrath of her attacker, because not only was she shot 4 times, it appeared that she had also been sexually assaulted, and according to the pathologist, this wasn't the first time that the teenage girl was sexually assaulted, because this sexual assault opened up a wound from a previous sexual assault incident. The community thought that this was another farm murder that went terribly wrong, But you see, in South Africa, when these type of murders happen, they don't usually leave any survivor. So that's how terrifying these attacks are. Not long after the murders, Deon went back to school, and it was said that quite strangely, he was very obnoxious about everything. He was bragging about what happened, and he was also talking very loudly about it. He became very difficult for his teachers to control, and it was said that this kind of behavior was not expected of him. However, the teachers thought that maybe this is his way of grieving for the loss of his family. When the investigation started, the police had no suspect in mind because they were still trying to gather as much evidence as they possibly could. However, they were also under a lot of pressure to solve these murders, not only from the community, but also from the press as well as the government, because crimes like these are seen as very heinous and very horrific. And as things went on like this, rumors started to fly around. And one of those rumors is that the daughter of the family, Marthella, was part of some kind of satanic cult. And that's how things went terribly wrong. And another rumor that was going around was that Deon Steenkamp is the one who killed his family and then decided to kill himself. But again, these were just rumors that were never proven to be true. The boys who lived in the same dorm as Deon apparently started feeling very uncomfortable with him around, and their parents were now starting to complain at the boarding school, demanding that Deon be taken out of the dorm because they were fearing for the safety of their own children. Because even though Deon hadn't been accused of murdering his family, he still wasn't ruled out as a suspect. And even though a person is innocent until proven guilty, they didn't want to have a potential killer anywhere near their children. And then finally, 4 months later, in August of 2012, investigators felt that they had enough evidence that they needed to pursue this case. Then on the 21st of August in 2012, Deon Steenkamp was called over to the principal's office at Grey College, and as soon as he got there, he was placed under arrest for the murders of his parents and his sister. After he got arrested, the police decided to go over to his dorm room because they had a warrant to search it for any evidence they could find on him. They also did this in hopes that it would get Deon to speak and say something about the crimes, but it never happened. And they also never found any evidence they could use against him in his dorm room. Now remember, Deon was still a minor when this case happened. He was between 16 and 17 years of age. And here in South Africa, we have Section 63, subsection 6 of the Child Protection Act, and also Section 154, subsection 3 of the Criminal Procedure Act, which order the protection of young offenders under the age of 18. And they ensure that the publication of their personal information is prohibited until they become legal adults. So when this case was still underway, obviously Deon's identity and his pictures could not be publicized because he was still a minor at that time. But now the public has access to those things because it's been years since the case happened. When Deon was granted bail, his extended family assumed that he would be staying with them. But this never happened. For some reason, he decided to go stay with one of his sports coaches, which obviously took his extended family by surprise. And even I found it a bit weird when I got to this part. The trial of Deon Steenkamp took place on March 11th in 2013, and he pleaded not guilty to all the charges that were laid against him. Deon was facing 3 counts of premeditated murder, 1 count of sexual assault, and also 1 count of obstruction of justice. South Africa has a new system where the accused can be taken to walk investigators through a house, apartment, or building to show them what happened on the night or day in question and how it all happened. And a video of this was taken and played in court. Deon said that there were robbers at the house that night, and they were the ones who shot his family. And then it was discovered that there were guns that were found at the property, a .22 rifle and a revolver. Now, according to Deon, the robbers must have left the guns outside when they left the house. But when investigators looked closely at the guns, they found that they had DNA on them as well as blood, but they had no dirt on them to show that they were actually outside. And it was also discovered that there were not any footprints around the property to show that there were multiple people just walking around the house. And there also wasn't any sign of chaos to show that someone was running away in a hurry to try to get away from that house. Not even tire tracks of what could be a getaway car that robbers would obviously need in order for them to get away from the property as fast as they could in the short amount of time that everything took place were ever traced. What the police actually noticed was that there was blood spatter on the wall as you leave the house where the guns were left. Nothing else looked disturbed, and since there were plates still on the table, it obviously showed that they had just finished eating that night and nothing in the house was broken. So this wasn't corroborating with the story that Deon gave out. I mean, why would people come and intrude on a wealthy family on a farm and leave without taking anything and just decide to kill them? And since he used the word robbers, obviously their intention was to take something from the house, but nothing was ever taken. So this really wasn't making any sense whatsoever. When the bodies were examined, it was discovered that Christel was the one who was shot first, and the fragments of the chair that she was sitting on were found in her gunshot wound. Then when she got shot, her husband Deon and her daughter Marthella were still watching TV in the living room, and that's when they stood up to go see what was happening. And once they did, that's when Deon was shot second, and then he just fell to the floor. And then when Marthella saw everything, she ended up getting shot in the chest. And then she ran out of the house, but then her attacker decided to follow her. And then as she was running, she ended up collapsing on the grass. And while she was still down, her attacker then decided to beat her up because there were bruises that were found on her face. Then the attacker assumed that she was dead, and then he went back to the house and then proceeded to beat up Deon Steenkamp as well. When Marthella went back into the house, it's unclear whether she was dragged back into the house or if she walked back into the house, but it looked like she wanted to call for help because there was some blood found on the telephone. Then after all three of them had died, they were all shot a second time with a different weapon. And during the trial, Deon seemed very uninterested in any of it, and he was also seen yawning quite a lot, as if he was very bored with everything that was happening. Then on November 18th in 2013, it was time for Deon to take the stand and defend himself. The prosecutor believed that Deon was the one who sexually assaulted Marthella, because it was also discovered that there was another incident that took place on the morning of the day in question. Deon and Marthella went horseback riding when he sexually assaulted her, and then when she told him that she was going to tell their parents about what he did, that's when he must have decided that he had to kill them all. And when the prosecutor said this, Deon didn't try to deny or argue it at all. As a matter of fact, he never said anything. However, his defense team argued that Marthella was not sexually assaulted, and the reason that she had some bruising in her private parts was because she actually used a tampon incorrectly, and that's when she bruised herself. Another thing that they came up with was that she had an infection and kept scratching herself in her private parts, which is why, again, she was bruised. Now, this really upset the judge, and he quickly dismissed all of these claims and told the defense that if they ever came up with anything like this ever again, they would never be allowed back in his court. Then Deon ended up telling his defense team that his father, Deon, is actually the one who sexually assaulted Marthella, and then proceeded to murder his wife and his daughter. And he said this is because he didn't want the secret to come out. And again, the judge was very angry about this and told Deon and his defense team to stop coming up with these claims once again. Then on the next day of November 19th in 2013, Deon just decided to fire his entire defense team, and he was left all by himself. But at the end of it all, Deon Steenkamp was found guilty of all 3 counts of premeditated murder, 1 count of sexual assault, and 1 count of obstruction of justice. But because of his age, since he was still between 16 and 17 years at the time, in South Africa, a minor can only be given a maximum of 20 years in prison. And one more thing that I think is worth mentioning is that the family wealth was valued at around 20 million rands, and it was said that Deon will most likely inherit all of it because the family wealth was put in a family trust. So you could say that it's all waiting for him once he gets out of prison. And something else that I picked up was a theory that apparently Deon always felt like he was always in the shadow of his sister because Marthella had a very good social life, a lot of friends, and she was well liked. And so because of this, because of all the favor and attention that she was getting, he felt like he couldn't keep up with her, and that's when he snapped and decided to take his family out. What a messed up story. But yeah guys, that was the case of the Griekwastad family murders. And what really scares me about these types of cases is that the perpetrator is not someone from the outside or someone they never knew. It's actually someone they lived with inside their own home, someone they took care of, someone they loved, someone that they actually raised. But they had no idea that he would be the reason their lives came to such a cruel ending. But we hope Deon, his wife Christel, and their beautiful daughter Marthella are resting in peace. And I also found out that Deon's father also ended up passing away of a stroke. So we also hope that he's also resting in peace. But that is all that I have for you guys on today's episode. Please do let me know what you think about it in the comment section down below. Do you think Don really could have killed his own family, or do you think there really could have been other people involved in this? And if you enjoyed the episode, please leave it a thumbs up by pressing the like button. That would really help with the algorithm so we can get this content to as many people as we possibly can and expand the family. And thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. Your support is always as amazing as ever and always highly appreciated. And again, if you are new here, please be part of the family and subscribe to the channel for more true crime content. That being said, I will see you guys in the next episode. Until then, enjoy the rest of your day, take care of yourselves, and cheers.